friends, Greece, even considering Turkey and Greece's regularly troubled relations. This was a startling escalation. Turkey's president directly threatened his country's western neighbor, saying that unless the Greeks remain calm, Turkey's new ballistic missiles would target their capital city. Recep Tayyip Erdogan's comments on an otherwise unremarkable December weekend came after months of threats and warnings. Alleged infringement of international treaties by Greece could call into question the sovereignty of many populated Greek islands. Erdogan has often warned that Turkish troops could arrive in Greece overnight. The striking rhetoric has raised doubts about its motivations and whether it could be a precursor to more concerning developments, such as a potential armed war between Turkey and Greece. Both NATO members. Both nations will hold national elections in the first half of 2023, which is likely to ratchet up the rhetoric even more. And Russia's war in Ukraine has shown that an invasion of a smaller European country by a larger neighboring power is no longer unfathomable. However, commentators on both sides of the Aegean Sea are cautious, observing an increase in verbal spats, but dismissing a military war between Greece and Turkey as implausible. The countries, who have long been enemies, are no strangers to conflict. For decades, mock dogfights between fighter jets over the Aegean have taken place as the two sides debate on the borders of Greece's national airspace. They disagree on a number of other issues, including the ethnically divided island of Cyprus, maritime limits in the Mediterranean Sea, and territorial claims in the Aegean Sea, which flows across their shared border. During a heated debate over exploration rights to prospective offshore energy deposits in 2021, Turkish and Greek vessels trailed one another and briefly collided. Greece and Turkey have been dangerously close to war 3 times in the last 50 years. The most recent came in January 1996, when a last-minute US intervention averted an armed battle over an uninhabited set of islets known as Imir in Greek and Kadak in Turkish. They were unknown to most people in either country. However, tensions in the Aegean led to a significant military buildup and a Greek Navy helicopter crash that killed 3 officers. Even in the run-up to the crisis, rhetoric, especially from Turkey, was not as bellicose as it is now. It's unheard of. This has never happened before, said Konstantinos Philis, an international relations professor who runs the American College of Greece's Institute of Global Affairs. We're talking of nearly 2 months where we have nearly daily statements by Turkey against Greece. This hasn't happened in a long time, and I'm not sure I've ever seen such direct threats. The elements behind the rise are several. Analysts argue that, in addition to the approaching elections, they include difficulties in Turkey's relations with the US and its exclusion from a fighter aircraft purchasing program. The United States dropped Turkey from the F-35 fighter jet production program in 2019 after Ankara purchased a Russian-made S-400 missile defense system, which Washington deemed a danger to the stealth fighter jets. Ankara has since sought new F-16 fighters and components to update its existing fleet, but such a purchase would require congressional permission in the United States. Greece has urged Washington to prevent its larger, more powerful neighbor from purchasing F-16 seconds while still pursuing its own military acquisition and modernization program, which includes new fighter jets and warships that are presently under construction. Erdogan stated earlier this month in the northern Turkish city of Samsun that Turkey has begun manufacturing its own short-range ballistic missiles, which he claims is frightening the Greeks. Say it can hit Athens, Erdogan remarked. Of course it will, I say. If you don't stay peaceful, if you try to buy items from the US and other countries to arm the islands, a country like Turkey will have to do something. I believe Erdogan's declaration is his way of warning Greece that there is no balance, that Turkey is still superior, and that Greece should therefore move very cautiously, said Özgüran Lahisasikli, director of the German Marshall Fund's Ankara office. However, if you take him at his word, It is a threat that should not exist in Turkish-Greek ties. Unlike stated that, in addition to warning Greece of Turkey's military capabilities, Erdogan expects his stern comments would help him in the next presidential and parliamentary elections in June. Erdogan, who has been president since 2003, is seeking a third term amid an economic crisis and surging inflation that has eaten away at salaries and placed even basic necessities out of reach for many. Unlike believes that threatening Greece will have little effect on the races. Past elections and polls show that national discourse helps a little bit in the beginning, but the effect is short-lived, he said. Its influence pales in comparison to the economic crisis. Phyllis agreed that Erdogan's verbal outburst was motivated in part by the Turkish elections. However, he emphasized that it was the first time Greece had been mentioned so heavily in public conversation in the run-up to a national election. Ankara has recently concentrated on the militarization of Greek islands in the eastern Aegean Sea, claiming that the deployment of armed forces is prohibited under international treaties. Greece responds that it is abiding by the treaties and that the islands must be defended against a hypothetical attack by Turkey, which keeps a substantial military force on its nearby coast. Turkey is creating a story, a narrative so that it can credit its own aggressive behavior against Greece to justify self-defense, according to Phyllis. A method that has many similarities with what Russia did and is doing in Ukraine. Still, both analysts agreed that the prospects of outright conflict, or of an accident or military incident causing an unintended escalation, were remote. Unlike said an armed battle is still a very, very low likelihood, stressing that previous mishaps, such as collisions involving military boats or jet crashes during island patrols, had not brought Turkey and Greece to war. A military crisis or conflict is a scenario with low likelihood, according to Phyllis. However, the climate that Turkey's government is nurturing may make something like that easier.